Are you in pursuit of the better you? If so, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Becki.
Hello, I'm Faye, and this podcast is all about maximising your potential and living your best life personally and professionally.
We're looking forward to being with you on your pursuit of the better you. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the In Pursuit of the Better You podcast. Today's topic of conversation came about from a leadership session that I'm delivering. So in this session, we were thinking about self-management and all the different aspects that go into make up self-management. And one of the things that came up in our little chat was around stress management. And in this room, I've got a level of sort of first line managers, or a number of first line managers and a middle manager. And the middle manager turned and said, I know this is going to upset a lot of people, but I don't think stress is real. I don't think it's a real thing. I think people create their own stress. And my jaw dropped a little, because in the room are two people that report into this person. He has a number of people that report into him. And I sort of said something along the lines of, I really hope that when someone in your team comes to you and tells you that they're really stressed, or that when you go on a visit and you see that they are stressed, that you don't turn around and say to them, I don't think stress is real. I think you've created this. And so I raised this as a potential talking point with Faye, because I think there's a number of sort of facets of this that are worth exploring around this topic of stress. So Faye, what was it that then made you think, okay, yes, this is something that would make a really good podcast episode?
Because as you told me this story, Becki, I knew that I used to think, as this person did in your world, I didn't used to believe in stress. But so I'm talking quite a few years ago, and the thing that changed my mind was feeling stress, of course. Of course. But no,
funny that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? But no, I didn't really believe in stress. And I'll tell you why. I have a friend who was always, as probably still is, but was always stressed. Oh, I'm stressed. Oh, I'm stressed. Oh, I'm stressed. And I got sick of hearing, oh, I'm stressed, if I'm honest with you. Everything made this friend stressed. And it was used as a general sort of term. And I don't know, I can't remember if I didn't actually really believe in stress, but I didn't believe that everything that my friend was going through was stress. And actually, when I'm thinking about stress, I'm thinking about my dad used to work with within engineering with metals. You'll probably understand what I talk about if I talk about non-destructive testing, Becki. My dad was a non-destructive tester, which is where you test metals without destroying them to test their strength, I think, something like that. And he used to talk a lot about, stressing the metal, stressing the joints, stressing the this, stressing the that. And, when we think of what stress really is, how much we have to perhaps go through to cause stress, I didn't believe perhaps my friend was really feeling stress. And who on earth am I to, have that belief? Whatever she was feeling was valid for her at the time. And I've done a lot of learning since then, and I've grown up quite a bit, so I'm there. But I didn't really believe in stress, and I was very lucky, wasn't I, to have lots of stress-free years. Yeah, definitely, because I worked, but I had a job that I loved. Yes, there were always things that went on within my work that were not always smelling of roses, let's say, but you work through those things, you come out the other side. I had relationships, some that broke down. I had friendships, sometimes were a bit tetchy, but really, was I stressed? No, I wasn't. And I think the first time I felt what I would course, I don't know, stress, anxiety. It was very, very anxious time. It was about, oh my goodness. I was going to say about 10 years ago. It's a lot more than that. It was when was it? Gosh, what even year are we in? I'm going to say 16 years ago. Yeah, 16 years ago. Goodness me. When my parents-in-law were both terminally ill at the same time, and work was hideous. And I say hideous because we had a new chief executive officer who was really changing things up, things that really shook the business in a bad way. And it was, I felt a lot of anxiety, and I could probably say I was stressed. And you work to get through that. And how it manifested in me was I was head to toe covered in eczema. Yeah, and that's how it came out in me. So I think
forget about your eczema.
My eczema. Thank you. Yeah, my eczema. Touch wood, currently under control. But yeah, I did clear it up for a lot of years. But there are things that happen in life, and I think I don't know if it's as you get older, but as you live, and things happen, and we go through things that we go through. I think there are, we take it on as people. We take it on at different levels. We take different things on at different levels. And who is anybody else to diagnose somebody else's stress level?
Yeah, and I think that's where sort of my jaw hit the floor with it, thinking about, what level of leadership this person was at, and where I therefore feel standards should be in terms of levels of understanding and things that, for me, that just wasn't hitting, in terms of, how could you say that? And, this person certainly had many more years of experience of life than I do. And it really did kind of blow my mind. And they sort of sat there and think about the position that I'm in. We get things thrown at us all the time, and I don't feel stressed. And I think, well, good for you. That doesn't mean, though, that you are immune to stress. It means that you are immune to stress in that area, and that maybe just the thing that, a bit like you, the thing that actually does stress you out hasn't come along yet. And a few years ago, really early on in my business, actually, I delivered a workshop into a team around stress. And I remember doing some research on it at the time. And something that I found really interesting, we use this word stress, don't we? And we use it a lot. But there's actually two different types of stress. There's eustress, which is, that's that sort of positive stress that we feel, when a deadline's looming, and it just kind of gives us that extra push to get something done, that extra push to work through something. And that kind of stress is usually very, very short term. It's like that short, sharp. Yeah, it's not where it is lingering. But the thing that made me think differently about stress is that actually the other aspect of stress that we don't label properly is distress. So we call it stress. And I wonder how much we might change the way that we think about stress when we're talking about long-term serious stress, if we actually used it by its proper label of distress. I'd never thought of it in that way. And as soon as I did think about it in terms of eustress, positive stress, and distress, it kind of really made me sit up, I think, a bit more and pay a bit more attention to how damaging it can be to be feeling stressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you think of distress, someone's in distress, you want to help them because you recognise that there is something going on for them that's not positive. So yeah, you want to reach out, and that person is in, distress, a bad way. Things are going on for them. That's really interesting, Becki. I didn't know that, so thank you for sharing that. And you know what? Of recent years, we've got so much going on, and I know I come back to this a lot on the podcast, but we can go back to COVID times. We haven't really got out of the mud, the sinking mud of life since then. And there's lots going on with cost of living, wars, threat of whatever, elections. Gosh, elections. And there's a lot of compound distress, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. And one of the discussions that came up today around stress was thinking about, do people use it as an excuse? They talk about it. Someone said it feels sometimes like stress has become the new bad back, where 20 years ago it'd be that someone would go to the doctor because they had a bad back, and the doctor couldn't really prove or disprove that they had a bad back, and that kind of they feel like people do the same thing now with stress. And I said, I'll be honest, I don't know any stats around that for how it's true. I think there has always been, and there will always be, people who will manipulate a system, whatever the system is. They find a way of manipulating it. However, what I would question is it that people use it as an excuse, or is it that 20 years ago we didn't talk about how we felt in the same way that we do now? And therefore, the stress that someone's feeling, it either did manifest itself in the very real creation of a bad back, or that was the only thing they felt that they could say, because physical pain was acceptable, but feeling pain in your thoughts and feeling pressure and stress in there wasn't acceptable. And I don't really know the answer. And when we look at, again, look at the changes in a generation. I know you had a working mum, Faye, with her own business. That wasn't the norm, though, right? Going back to for our parents, so our parents are a not too dissimilar age. My mum was mostly a stay-at-home mum. She was a homemaker. That's where her role was. And we look at the changes that have happened in the world, a bit like you said, around cost of living, around expectations that we have, hopes that we have for ourselves now. I think we hope for more things than perhaps our parents' generation hoped for. And that has the potential to bring with it stress on the things that we feel that we need to do, or the things that we do need to do to get by in this modern world.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right there, Becki. Yeah. So my mum did work. She had a career, and then she ended up having her own business. But yeah, I remember my parents bought their house, had their house, still in that house. They've done it up, renovated it over the years, and it is what they want it to be. But then there's that expectation that me and my sister would have our own houses, and that we'd meet somebody and we'd get married, settled, the very traditional sort of route. But the sheer fact that even those sort of family traditions are different now, probably, me and my sister probably have followed that route quite a bit. But even families look different now. We're not next door neighbours. We might move away from our parents, so they're not there to help with children. Becki, so I know that you're quite a drive from your parents, and you've got two little ones. And before the podcast, you were talking about how your parents are going to be looking after your kids this weekend. And, back in the day, you'd just pop them next door or down the road, and they'd be looked after. They'd be fine, and they'd be looked after by the neighbours as well. Everybody looked out for their own. Kids don't even play outside these days. So it is a worry for me about my nearly 14-year-old who spends his life on games and actually gets his social interaction with his friends through technology, even though his best mate just lives down the road. They don't physically see each other outside of school. They play games and see each other there. So that whole, we're living different lives, and all of the, like you say, the hope for what we'll have, maybe a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses as well. Maybe what we know we see that we don't have, that other people have got. That in itself. Can be really hard.
We're exposed to so much more of that now, aren't we?
So,
With the rise of the internet and social media,
Yeah.
we are exposed to how the other half live, as it were.
Yeah.
And actually, we know there's more than halves, don't we? But how other people live, the kind of things that they have, the kind of things that they don't have, that might make us feel a bit lucky to be in the situation that we are in. And that brings with it as well one of those thoughts that really winds me up. When people say things like, I don't know, you can't be feeling that way, or you shouldn't be feeling that way, because it could be worse. You could be living in some third world country and I don't know, your kids have got no shoes on their feet and you're drinking water from a dirty well. And
Sure.
and I get that, and I am grateful that that's not where I live. Doesn't mean that I can't feel stress, upset, whatever it is about what it is that I do or don't have in my life. Those two things don't have to be linked together, in my opinion.
Do you know what, though? I saw a clip of Jimmy Carr talking with, I'm sure it's Stephen Bartlett for his podcast, and I just saw the clip on Instagram. I haven't listened to the podcast, but Jimmy Carr was talking about these days we have everything. We absolutely have everything. If we want it, we can go and get it. We can get credit to go and get it. We live the best lives ever. If you look at what we've got all the technology. I'm talking to Becki. Becki, you're miles away from me at the moment. And
I am in Bristol.
I know you are. And,
sunny Bristol.
And we're chatting. We can do that. We've got everything we want. We don't have to go to the pictures anymore. We get stuff on Netflix really quickly or what have you. We've got everything, right? We can travel. We can do anything. We've got all the clothes we need. We've just got it all. And yet with that, we've got so much heaviness on our shoulders with that. There's something about having a simple life, but I don't think there's such a thing as a simple life these days. And so with the lives we live, I guess we get stressed.
And it's funny, actually, because I think a few podcast episodes ago, I talked about, we want to make a move. And because I'm very much having that feeling of stop the world, I want to get off. And I want to go back to that simpler life. I say back to it. I've never lived it. I have this beautiful version of how it'll be in my head. And at the same time, we will still have to do other things because we will still need to earn money, pay bills, pay for the mortgage, pay for the land, pay for days out with the minis, ice creams, And so you're right. I think even the simple life as we think of it doesn't exist anymore in the same way. And there's always that potential for stress to be there. And I think, if there was one thing, I feel like we've taken some meanders today, and they felt like really nice meanders, all around this subject. And if there was one thing that I would really want to stress to people, it's to never assume that just because you feel that something is stressful or isn't stressful, that other people feel the same way. And I think I would probably stress that onto the people who don't feel the stress when someone is talking about something that they are feeling it with. Because we're all different, aren't we? And we all have that different tolerance. And something else that down the line you find stressful, this person could have been dealing with all day, every day. And actually it doesn't stress them out. That's part of their everyday lives. And just recognising that we are all different there. And that it is a serious issue. We know that stress, as well as causing mental health issues, it can cause physical health issues. We are at increased risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, to name just a few of the physical symptoms that can go along with being stressed. It is something that we do need to take a serious look at.
And empathy costs nothing. We can empathise, if that's the right word, I'm not sure. But we can have empathy, and we can show our empathy to those around us who are dealing with other things that are making them feel as they're making them feel. And that costs nothing, does it? thank you for listening to In Pursuit of the Better You. If you'd like to know more, you can see Becki at questforest.co.uk and Faye at fayeblakey.com.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and thank you to Wahoo Media for our production.
And we'll see you again on the next leg of your pursuit.